Hello, this is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James. This is your latest Rangers news, guys. We're going to talk Kieran Dowell in this video, which was kind of put on the agenda by Russell Martin and the comments that he made as regards that senior leadership group when he talked about Dowell being one of that senior leadership group. I think a lot of us expected, let me just turn this light on, a lot of us expected Dowell to leave at the start of this season to head back to Birmingham where he'd been successful, somewhere like that. I think that was the kind of the idea, wasn't it? Now, I'm going to talk about this senior leadership group to some degree through what I'm going to talk about with Kieran Dowell. I guess I'll need to be careful. I won't mention Tav because I don't want the abuse that you get from the fanboys and from some of the gallant trolling podcasts out there that gallantly post laughing emojis on people's videos rather than actually have any sort of mature response. Just tiny people with tiny minds. Anyway, look, let's talk a little bit of Kieran Dowell. Dowell joined Rangers on a free transfer under Michael Beale. A guy, when he joined the club, Norwich City fans told us that he was better than Cantwell, that we were getting a better player than Todd Cantwell, and that they were actually more upset to be losing Kieran Dowell than they were to be losing Todd Cantwell. Look, personally, I loved Todd Cantwell. I thought he was a top player. Football wise, yes, he had his downsides with the whole TikTok Todd and the social media side of it, and obviously, that was always a downside. I think, the whole situation around Cantwell was ruined by Philippe Clement's terrible man management of the player. But, back to Kieran Dowell. Now, like I said, lots of people expected Dowell to leave. Now people obviously saw that he was a success at Birmingham, and certainly if you look at Kieran Dowell's stats from his time at Birmingham, who obviously went on to win League One and were promoted back to the Championship, and certainly, seemed to be going all out this season to be a success in the Championship. He made 19 appearances for Birmingham. He scored 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 goal contributions in 19 games, and was a very, 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 very good member of their team. So, it's a bit of a surprise that Birmingham decided not to renew their interest in him, decided that they didn't really want him and they were wanting to move on from Kieran Dowell once they got promoted to the Championship, especially as many people feel that sort of the Championship is Kieran Dowell's level. Certainly if you look at his past career and his experience, a lot of that has come in at the Championship. Reports coming out of Auchenhowie out of the training camp certainly seem to indicate that Dowell has had a very positive training camp under Russell Martin. He's been very good in training by all accounts. He's been very good in the behind closed doors friendly. He was slightly less impressive, obviously, in the Club Brugge friendly, where he was taken off at half time. But many people have kind of indicated that Dowell's looked good in behind closed doors friendly games and in training, did look good for Birmingham because, with the greatest respect to Birmingham, there isn't the pressure on you playing for Birmingham or playing behind closed doors or playing in training that there is running out in front of 55,000 people at Ibrox or even 30,000 people at Ibrox, as with the Club Brugge friendly match. Many people kind of, I think, have said that Dowell, the issue with Dowell is not that he's not a good footballer. I think he's obviously got a very good natural level of talent. He probably wouldn't, you wouldn't make it as a footballer if you didn't. The issue around Dowell is handling the pressure of the shirt, handling the weight of playing for Rangers, and he's, I think, struggled to some extent with that, and that may be part of the reason why he hasn't been a success at the club so far. So I think some of, if Russell Martin really does see him as part of his plans for this coming season, which it seems like he does, one of the things that he's got to kind of get over with Dowell is to get Dowell past this pressure, past this fear of playing for Rangers, perhaps past this weight of the shirt, story that obviously goes on around a lot of players who come to the club. Obviously around Dowell as well, I think there's been a struggle for him to kind of pin down a position. He's been kind of more of a bit part player. He's never really had a place to call his own. He's never really established himself within the team, partly through his own bad performances, partly for the management of the player, and that is obviously down to the coaches we've had. He's never really been settled in a position, and you find with players, like with when Nico Raskan, and I don't think that Dowell's anywhere near as good as Raskan, but when Raskan was brought into the team, put into the 6th role, given the chance to make that role his own, he's shone. He's been one of the best players in Europe this season, or this past season. However, Dowell's never, and I'm not saying Dowell would ever go on to do that, but Dowell has never had an opportunity to really establish himself in one position within the Rangers team. And I think that's a lot of it, why a lot of us sit there and go, well, where is Kieran Dowell's best position? What does he actually do? Is he a winger? Is he a 10? Is he an 8? Is he a 6? What does he actually do? Where does he actually play? And I think a lot of us, if you stood outside Ibrox on match day and interviewed 50,000 fans and asked them, where's Kieran? What is Kieran Dowell's position? You would probably get like 8 or 9 different answers, and they would be evenly split between those 8 or 9 different answers as to, obviously they weren't obviously sarcastic answers, as some people would give. You'd probably get a situation where you'd have, roughly probably 20-30% saying right number 8, 20-30% saying winger, 20-30% saying 10. Some people saying, 6. You'd have a variance, I think, of people talking about where his best position was for the club. But like I said, it does seem that he is very much part of the plans for this season. Now, the issue with that, of course, is the fact that he only has a year left on his deal. Do we really want another situation where we are going to have a player that plays for us all year, but then walks at the end of the season for absolutely nothing? So then, of course, that causes the debate, as I said on the video this morning, do you give him a new contract? That is obviously something that the club will need to decide. And maybe, just maybe, they're kind of doing this in terms of, well, let's give him until... let's give him the first couple of months of the season, and if he really impresses in the first couple of months of the season and settles in well and becomes an important part of Russell Martin's starting 11 or matchday squad, that he then gets that new contract. I don't know. That may be how the club are thinking, that they're not wanting to rush into anything quite yet. I mean, Dowell, in terms of where he's played through his career, this is the breakdown of that. He's played the majority of his time as an attacking midfielder. And it may be that obviously with the injury to Thelo Asgard that he gets an opportunity to kind of bed down in that role now, that he's, the go-to guy. And it certainly seems that Nadim Bayrami, as well as he may have played, he has not obviously caught Martin's eye to the extent that Kieran Dowell has. He's made 120 appearances in the 10 role. He scored 31 goals, 12 assists, 43 goal contributions in 120 games, playing from attacking midfield. He's also played right midfield 52 times, 10 appearances, 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 goal contributions. Central midfield, so more than 8. Right wing, 18. Left midfield, 17. Second striker, 2. Left winger and defensive midfield player. So from those analysis, it's attacking midfield, it's right midfield. So not really an out-and-out right winger as such. More the right of a 3 or the kind of an inverted 2 behind the striker, which I think is kind of what Russell Martin's done to some extent with Asgard and Dowell behind the striker. Also on the wing as well, we don't have many options on that wing. We've signed JD Gassama, who's more a left-sided player. There's still a lot of links to right-sided players, like the Abu Kamara link, for example, the Poku link that fell through, of course, and others. So, it could be that Russell Martin looks at this and sees that Dowell fills a need within his squad at this moment in time, that we don't have the 10s to back up Asgard. We don't have the right midfielders to come in and play in that inverted sort of right winger spot that he wants to bring into the team. He is left-footed, Dowell, after all, and would cut in, as Tierney used to some extent. Obviously, he's not particularly fast, Kieran Dowell. That's the one thing that would kind of go against him. In terms of his experience and where he's played in his career, Kieran Dowell has played, like I said, has played the majority of his football in the English Championship. That's where he comes from. And I think, the signings of Dowell, I think, is part of those that have kind of caused the whole, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of Championship duds, tag that's been given to some of these players we've signed this season. Some people are fearful because of the likes of Kieran Dao, because of the likes of Ben Davies, that that Kieran's come in and never really fulfilled anything at Rangers. And like I said, he's played the majority of his career in that championship. In that championship level, 123 of his career appearances been at championship level, 26 goals, 12 assists, 38 goal contributions. He played Premier League 2 when he was at Everton. He's made 22 appearances in the Scottish Premiership, 21 appearances in the Premier League, the EPL. Obviously, that's positive. If you played in the EPL, fair enough. 19 in League 1, 10 in the FA Cup, 9 in the EFL Cup, 4 Champions League qualifiers, all for Rangers, obviously, 3 in the Scottish League Cup, 3 in the EFL Trophy, 2 in the Europa League, again for Rangers, 2 Scottish Premiership top 6 splits, 1 Challenge Cup appearance during his time. So it's a vast CV of football experience there. And like I said, I think that the whole past with Dowell has kind of clouded people's judgment of Championship players to some extent, and perhaps unfairly so. I think sort of looking at it, and trying to sort of look at Asgard, look at Skasama, look at Rothwell in the same light as Dowell is a little bit unfair on those players. I mean, in terms of, Dowell's scouting report and what scouts and analysts say that Kieran Dowell is, I mean, look, I think that's a lot of it. Is a lot of us don't really know what he is. Well, he's a footballer, but you know what I mean. Scouts say that he's a creative, technically skilled attacking midfielder known for passing range, particularly passing through balls, ability to find space between the lines. Now, that's some of the key things there that I think Rangers will be looking for this season. Finding that space between the lines, threading the ball through, breaking down the low block. And Russell Martin's probably looked at, analysed, seen the league, seen what happens in the league and thought, right, this is what I need for my players. I need players who can break down that low block, who can work between the lines, who can thread little balls through for strikers. And Dowell, maybe, he's looked at Dowell, he's looked at what Dowell did at Birmingham and kind of said, well, he could be the man for me. He could be the player who could come in and really add to it. Now, he's a set-piece taker as well. He's had opportunities to take set-pieces at Birmingham. Obviously, less opportunity at Rangers, because unless your name's James Tavernier, you don't seem to be allowed to take corners, free kicks, throw-ins or anything at Rangers. His movement is fairly good. He's very football intelligent. I mean, obviously, I don't know about his personal intelligence. I don't know, how a particularly intelligent a person he is. Never met him. He's got a good shot from long range. He's not afraid to have a dig from long range. That's what we've seen from his time at Birmingham. And I think, maybe as well, when he was at Birmingham, operating with confidence, operating with that little bit more confidence, operating with that little bit more freedom, he perhaps did excel that little bit more. And perhaps that restriction that he had at Rangers, which was possibly down to Beale, down to Clement, and the way that they handled him, sort of restricted what we saw from him. Which I'm trying to find the positives here in Dowell, because it's quite clear that Martin sees him as part of his plans, that he sees him as part of this team. And we have to look for why Russell Martin is doing this. We can sit and we can criticise and we can slag Kieran Dowell off as much as we want, but at the end of the day, he is going to be a Rangers player this season, so it seems, and we've got to look for why he's there, what he's going to contribute, and look for that and see, does he live up to that potential? Does he live up to being able to do that? And I think for me, the jury will be out. Of course it will be. As the jury's out on a lot of these players, particularly, the players who were here last season who failed, who are still here this season, the jury is out. There's a lot of people watching and thinking, right, you've got to prove something to us this season. Go out there and do it, or else. I think that's very much how many fans are looking at it. Guys, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Is there any positives here? Is there anything you can see as being a good positive for Rangers moving forward with Kieran Dowell as a player in Russell Martin's team? What does Russell Martin see? Let me know if you can tell me what your thoughts on this. I've given you my thoughts. Let me hear from you and what your views are on this. If you're going to come on and comment just ridiculously stupid stuff, or just post laughing emojis, don't bother. You pathetic little saddos who nobody cares about. Thanks for watching. As always, if you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share and subscribe. And guys, I will catch you on the next one.